Art time! Art time with Mrs. Reed! We will be making a fall-themed artwork using oil pastels and watercolor paints. After you've gathered your materials, start with pencil by drawing two big overlapping ovals near the middle of your paper. This will be the center of your pumpkin. Make your pumpkin a little bit wider by adding extra bumps on either side, and then draw the stem coming up and out from the center of the pumpkin. Erase any lines that you might have overlapped. If you want to, you can also make your pumpkin look like it's fresh off the vine by adding some curly lines and some leaves near the stem. And because fall is all about leaves falling to the ground, I decided to add some different leaves below my pumpkin. For variety, try to make your leaves different shapes and sizes. And don't forget to add a horizon line in the background so that your pumpkin doesn't look like it's just floating in the air. Now you're ready for oil pastels. The oil pastels will be used to trace over your pencil lines. You're not really going to use them to color in the way you would with a marker or a crayon. You're just tracing over the lines, pressing fairly hard to make sure you have enough oil pastel on there. All the extra space outside of your pencil lines will be colored in using the watercolor paints. The cool thing about oil pastels is that you can mix colors together. Here I'm adding a little bit of red to my orange to make it a reddish orange color. And I'm also smudging it a little bit with my finger to make it blend a little bit smoother. This is a great way to make some parts of your pumpkin look a little bit more shaded or shadowy. You can switch up your colors depending on what part of your drawing you are working on. You can also add extra details, like here I decided to add sort of a wood grain curvy line pattern to my pumpkin stem. That oil and water don't mix. The oil pastels are actually going to resist the watercolor paints that we put on top. So even though I'm using a white oil pastel to add some clouds in my background on the white paper, you'll still be able to see them in the end when I add the watercolor paints on top. Once you're done tracing over your pencil lines with the oil pastels, you are ready for the watercolor paints. They're called watercolors because they are thirsty paints and they need water to work, so make sure that you're giving your watercolors plenty of water drops from your water cup, and you need to stir, stir, stir with your paintbrush in order to make sure that you are mixing that water with the color and turning it into paint. I'm using a lot of orange here to fill my pumpkin. It takes a little bit of time because the pumpkin is so big. Just make sure that anytime your brush starts to feel kind of scratchy or the paint isn't really spreading, you might need to dip your paintbrush in the water again and then back into the color. So you can see how many times I'm dipping back and forth between my paper, my paints, and my water cup. You can also mix colors together. I rinsed off my brush and now I'm switching to red to add some more shading to my pumpkin to make that darker reddish orange near my the bumps in my pumpkin. might want to switch up colors. Don't forget to rinse off your brush every time you change to a new color. That way the paint set stays nice and neat and your colors don't get all mixed up. You might have noticed that your watercolor set does not have the color brown, but you can actually make your own brown by mixing together two colors that are complementary or opposite each other on the color wheel. So I'm mixing together red and green on my stem in the middle leaf to make my own brown. If it looks a little bit too reddish, I added some green, and if it looks a little bit too greenish, I added some red until I was happy with the look of it. Pumpkin was looking a little bland to me, so I decided to add some yellow to each section of my pumpkin as a little highlight. So I wound up using all three warm colors, red, orange, and yellow, to paint my pumpkin. As I start to paint my sky blue, those little white cloud lines that I drew with the oil pastel are starting to reappear. It's like a little hidden secret. I decided to mix in some purple with my blue sky. I was trying to make it look like it was evening or dusk. You can always go back and add more details with your oil pastels. Just tap the paper to make sure it's dry. If the paper's still a little too wet, there's a chance you might rip the paper. So always tap it to be sure. Yay, you did it! Your artwork is gourd-geous. Get it? Gourd-geous, because a pumpkin is a gourd. I actually painted that same pun on my window at my house to make my neighbors smile. Stay creative. I can't wait to see your artwork.